Hi, and welcome to episode 117 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but you can find me as Heartland Knits on Ravelry, Instagram, and Periscope. And today is Sunday, September 20th, 2015. I feel like I have so many things I want to tell you about and show you this week. But just a word of warning, I have a cake in the oven, so I have a timer on my phone. So if that goes off, I'm going to have to take a little break. So hopefully I've got the Periscope notifications turned off, because whenever anybody that I follow Periscopes, it sends out an alert signal. So anyway, let's get on with the knitting. And let me show you what's been on my needles. So I am going to show you another of the projects that I have been working on since August, when I cast on this big group, 23, I guess, projects. I've done that before, and the last time was 11 years ago. And the project that I'm going to show you is the one thing that kind of was left over from that big bunch that got cast on. And that is an Alice Starmore Fair Isle sweater that's called Rona. And 4 years ago, I cast it on, and then I kind of got up to the underarm of the body. Since then, most of it was kind of that fall of 2011. And then it just got kind of put aside. I was doing other things that winter, and every fall I sort of would take it out. I think I've shown it on the podcast before, but it just never kind of stuck. I started the cuff of a sleeve or something. It just never kind of really got moving. So this time, when I was going to start a whole bunch of projects, I picked this one back up and thought, I would really like to maybe wear that this fall. So I have been knitting on it. So this is the sleeve of Rona, and this is an Alice Starmore Fair Isle sweater. And here, I'll just quick show you the body. The colors look much darker than they do kind of in person. I've put pictures of this up on Instagram. So this is the body that's been done for quite some time, and this is what I've knit. I think I had the cuff done, and then I have been knitting this. So this is a Fair Isle pattern. This is truly Fair Isle. A lot of people use that word when it's not really. Just because it's stranded knitting doesn't make it Fair Isle. So what makes this Fair Isle is it has these different bands of patterns, and this like right in here, it kind of looks like an O if you go around, and then this is like an X. That is classic Fair Isle, the OXO sort of patterns. And there's different ways of working them, but that sort of is a very common kind of thing. And then the bands are separated by this little smaller pattern. So this, repeating breaks up the bands, and that is called a Peary pattern. And so there are tons and tons of those. It just means a little pattern that breaks up the bigger bands. So this is a true Fair Isle. You'll sometimes see kind of, I won't know if they call them modern Fair Isles. This was the traditional pattern kind of setting, how they set up the patterns. Sometimes you will see sort of an all over pattern, but they will kind of do how this color banding, with an all over pattern. It won't be separate little patterns, but they will mimic the look of it by changing off the colors like that. So that is just one thing I want to do. This has a lot of colors. I'm going to hold up my basket. And so this is the basket with all the colors in it. And it's a really kind of shallow basket. And this is how I, what I do to work with them. So I'll, there's just two colors in a round. So I'll just pull out 2 strands at a time, and everything can stay in there. I can see all the colors, so I can just pull that one out when I need it, because there's almost every round you're changing at least one color, either a background color or a pattern color. So it's changing all the time, and I am going through and I'll show you the inside. This is where my seam line is, but I am spit splicing all those colors. So instead of having all those little ends to work, to, weave in at the end, I'm spit splicing as I go. It was slow going down here at the cuff because you would barely get kind of in a rhythm of going, and then you would be at the end of a round, and then you have to stop, break off the yarn, break out on the ply, both things. And so it really dragged. It left kind of lots of opportunity to just put it down and say, okay, I'm done for today. Now that I'm up this far, you get a lot more knitting before you have to change colors again. And I am doing this. This was a pattern, an Alice Starmore pattern that she published back in the mid-90s. It comes from the book In the Hebrides, which was one of her books. And back then she was had an entire line of yarns, a couple different weights and stuff, but she had one that was a fingering weight, a Shetland. Well, I think, I don't want to get in trouble, but I think many of the colors were spun by Jameson, that does Jameson Spindrift now. So that is what I'm using. I'm using Jameson Spindrift. So anyway, so back in the 90s, she had this whole line of yarns and books to go with them. And they had, beautiful, she did beautiful errands too, but beautiful Fair Isles. And then at some point, I don't know, what's around 2000 or so, she, wasn't going to have that line of yarns anymore. And so the books kind of were in high demand, but there were, other Fair Isle, or not Fair Isle, but Shetland yarn mills. And so, and like I said, I think a lot of her colors came from the Jameson mills. So there were, at that time, a lot of people were doing kind of substitutions, and there were tables to how to substitute, colors in for what had been her yarns to ones that were available at that time and are still available. And so a few years ago, my friend Maureen at camp came with this sweater, Rona, for show and tell, and I just fell in love with it. It's my favorite of all of the Alice Starmore Fair Isles. So I asked her if she, would tell me the color numbers she used to substitute in for the originals. And so that's what these are. And so this is all Jameson Spindrift. And so it's very, very close to the original, how it was in the actual, in the Hebrides book. So now, about, 10 years ago maybe, Alice Starmore started producing a different line of yarns you can look at them on her website is Virtual Yarns, and she's got a couple different weights, and one of them is similar to this. So not all of her designs were transferred over to that new yarns, because it's not as broad and as expansive a color range as the original, and as what Jameson Spindrift comes in. And so, but this was one of the designs that she sort of redid in her new yarn. So you can go on Virtual Yarns and you can buy a kit for Rona, and I think you get the pattern and the you know, the colors that she has now. They're a little bit different. It's still really pretty, and you can look at the difference on Ravelry. There's, you know, if you look under Rona, you can see sort of kind of the original ones, the original ones, and the Spindrift ones, and then the virtual yarn ones. And there's all pretty, but it's just they're a little bit different. So I am doing this with the Jameson spin. So this has maybe a couple more inches to get to that point, and then I've got to do the other sleeve, and then it'll be really fun to have like nice long rows, because that's like the stranded knitting is so fun and kind of rhythmic and soothing, because you get in that rhythm and you can sort of like sing the patterns of like 2 2 3 1 2 3 or whatever, and you can just like repeat them, and it's very meditative. And so anyway, that's what's been on my needles that I wanted to show you this week. And I have an off the needles. You won't believe this. I can hardly believe it. So last week I showed you that I had started Sam the Ram by Rita O'Connell. I have a finished sheep. Here he is. This is Sam the Ram. I think the light, I don't know if the pattern's showing up, but so I finished him. I worked many sort of late nights. I would stay up because he was so fun to knit. It's been a long time since I've had a project that I just didn't want to go to bed. So I would stay up to 1:32 one night knitting on Sam, because he was so much fun to knit. So the construction was fun. I loved the yarn. This was Blackberry Ridge. I got this in a kit at the Sheep and Wool last week. And last Sunday I just had his little face done. So the sort of sequence is like you picked up stitches, kind of grafted him together here, and picked up stitches and did short rows for the neck. But I don't know if, yeah, you can see his the cable patterns. So doing them, the cable patterns with short rows, you know, the pattern is beautifully written, beautifully written. And then, so most of the whole thing is done in the round. I loved how the shaping was done for his tail. You increased and you're working in the round, and then you're like decreasing, and it all just like flows with the pattern, and it's just like really so fun. The yarn was wonderful to work with. This is Blackberry Ridge, their sport weight. And honestly, I want a sweater just like Sam's. I want to do a sweater for myself out of this yarn. It was really nice, like springy, and it's soft. And you know, the gauge on this, in the pattern, it says at least 6 stitches to the inch. So the suggested needle size was size 4, which is 3.5 millimeter. I went down to a size 3 millimeter, which is like a 2.5, just because when I started to do his face, I thought, oh, that it didn't seem like firm enough. And, you know, also because it's the sport weight, I wanted to, you know, not have it open. And I know I wanted him nice and like, you know, firmly knit. So he is like really stuffed. I stuffed him last night with it was like an entire bag, like a 12-ounce bag of you know, filled from, I think I got it at Joann's. So he's got a lot of stuffing in him, but you want him nice and firm so that like he will, you know, his legs have to be, you know, able to stand up by himself. The stitch patterns were fun. It's been a while since I've done an Aran. I have an Aran actually on the needles, but I haven't worked, you know, on it that much. But so this was really fun to do. The pattern is excellent. I looked up on Ravelry. It is available for download, and I would highly recommend it. I mean, I had the printed copy, so I I'm assuming it would, come this. I don't know that they've redone it or anything. That the has a lot of different charts in it. The pattern is 23 pages long, so it's that could sound like, oh, that's like really long and complicated, but it really isn't. It is written very clearly. Several pages are just the charts. And so she gives like different options, depending on like what you wanted to do. You could do a 3-needle bind off on the bottom, you could graft it, or you could bind off and sew it. So, you've got a choice there. When it comes to like handling all the Aran charts, there's a couple ways. You have to flip back from the charts to like where it's doing the shaping and stuff. And I did read on Ravelry, people were complaining about sort of that. And what I want to say is that, I'm sure there are people out there who would come up with really elaborate strategies to like how to keep track of where you are in each chart, because these are not all the cables are turning on the same row. So like some people only want, like if you have an Aran pattern, like all the charts like to cross on maybe a multiple of 4. So on like, row 4, like a short chart that would a short cable that turns every 4th row, and another one that maybe goes every 8, and then maybe one that turns every 12, so that you always are kind of, you can tell. Where these, like some of them are every 4, some of them are every 6, there's some 10, there's some 8, and to keep track of like which row you're on. And what I would tell you is just look at your knitting. And that's what I tell you, like for almost everything, is learn to look at your knitting, not just that top row that you're knitting and you have to go like in knit 3, like purl 3, knit 3, but look at what's like underneath, like where you have come. So that I'm going to turn them upside down because that's like how you go. So you like, after you get sort of one repeat of the cable done, you sort of know. So, okay, so like this one, you can see it turns this direction, and then you're here and you turn, goes, so you know which way that cable is turning. You don't have to be glued to the chart to say, okay, and that's like 2, whatever, and look up the little thing. You can see which way. It just is like, what did you do before? Okay, it turned this direction. So then the question is, how many rows do, before I cross that cable? And this was done in the round, and I know there's doing Aran's. Personally, I think doing them flat, it's like easier to just eyeball the chart. You do have to like have the seams on the sides, but it's easier to eyeball that you've got like 2 rows. Okay, if I have to cross the cable every 8 rows, and I look at it, and it's easy to see when it's 6 rows, oh, that's too short. But if it's 7, it's like, is that 7 or 8? You end up maybe having to count. So I grab a needle here. So I'm going to show you like the easiest way, so that I know some people love their counters and they love the little things, but if you just have your knitting, it's always there and you can count it. So once you learn this, it's like freeing. You're freed from those things. So so when you're doing a cable twist, you always, where it twists, you always end up with a little bit of a bigger row. And this is going to be harder to see because it's, stretched out on this thing. So wherever you turn between rows, there's always kind of a little bit bigger hole. I don't know if you can like see, like I'm going to like pull that down. So like there's always a little bit bigger hole. So if you just put your needle in that bigger hole and then bring it up to, and like say you're knitting, the top of the needles is right up there. So you go in that bigger hole, and then all these little ladders is what you count. So you can count 1, 2, 3. This is 10. And then so if you count 10, and that's what you're going to turn, then you know that you're going to turn that cable on this round. If it's only 8 or 9 or whatever, then you have to do an additional one. So, once you get through that first repeat, you don't have to be like so tied to the charts. And that's just like a really good little thing that you can do so that you always know kind of what row you're on. So he was just the most fun. I love how his little horns are constructed. They're all done with short rows. And I didn't put eyes on him. It's, you could embroider eyes on if you want, but I kind of like him blind. Blind like me. So yeah. So I love Sam. I want to make another one. I want to make a pink one. Oh, cake. Okay, I wish you were all here and could eat some of the cake. I'm making German chocolate cake, and I'm doing a cooked like a caramel panucci. I'm not sure how you pronounce it. Frosting on it. It was one of the things that my mom used to make that I'm like trying to figure out, and I can remember her talking about my grandmother making that, and that was one of the things that she, when my grandmother, that she never learned to make, that she tried to learn to make. So the cooked fudge I can do. This one is harder. So anyway, I wish you were here to have some. But anyway, I was saying I want to make a flock of sheep. I want to make a pink Sam. They do have a pattern called Sue the Ewe, which I think she's constructed similarly, but she has more of just an all over sort of a stitch pattern, and then you do a little Shetland shawl to put around her neck. But he was so much fun to knit, and I love him. So, for show and tell, I have a couple things. I wanted to tell you about this wonderful exhibit that I went to at one of our local museums. It's called the Paine Arts Center, and what it is it's a house built in the 20s, 30s, and 40s by Nathan Paine, who was a lumber baron, and it was built in the kind of English country house style. And so they had an exhibit. It's been here all summer, and I knew if I didn't kind of wait to close to the end that I'd end up going again. So plus they were having bus tours all summer, and I wanted to go when it was maybe a little bit quieter. But it's an exhibit called Dressing Downton. And this is one of the costumes. They had 36 of the costumes from the first 4 seasons of Downton Abbey. It was so fabulous. So, I mean, I love the show, like a lot of you do, and, remembered sort of when they were, and it was so well done, that you weren't allowed to take pictures. I so wish I could have taken pictures, but they said that the costumes are owned by ITV, and so you weren't allowed. You're not normally allowed to take pictures throughout the house, but the when they have exhibits, they have kind of a gallery space that you usually can. So for this, they had the costumes throughout the whole house. They had sort of the front in the gallery. They had some of the uniforms, some of the like Mary's riding habit, and that the hats were wonderful to see, and it was just it was so good. And these were the actual costumes worn by the actors during filming. I wasn't aware that a lot of the really pretty like beaded gowns and things that the actresses were actual vintage. So they either had an actual dress that they used the whole thing that, or maybe, altered it to fit the actress, um, or they took, portions of it and maybe added on to it, or, changed it up a little bit, for the right whatever, to fit in right. But it said it was really nicely laid out, so they would have sort of the character and like what season it was in and what character wore it and sort of what was going on. This is when they had the dinner and, Sir Richard came for the first time, and this is the dress that Mary wore. And so you could sort of remember the scene. But it said that, so these, beaded dresses from the 1920s, it said you could actually, when the actresses were wearing them and walking around, you could hear beads dropping off of them. So one of the other ones that I was like, oh my gosh, it was Cora's dress when Edith got married. She had sort of a kind of a linenish, like off, like white kind of dress, and then she had sort of a coat that had a border print around, the front and then around the bottom. And that was actually a tablecloth from the 1920s that they really liked that border print, and so they had it made into this coat. So then, so it was just wonderful. And so anyway, I'm telling you, it's today is the last day that it's going to be here. It's been here like since sometime in June, and it's going to Virginia, somewhere in Virginia. So I'm just saying, if you're out in that area and so you have an opportunity to see it, I highly, highly recommend it. I don't think you necessarily have to be a big fan of the show. If you are, you will definitely remember. I was so glad that they had this one because I loved this dress and this hat. So I was really glad they had this one. They had so many pretty ones. So I did that and walked. It was a beautiful like summer. We had like 3 of the best summer days last week. So I walked around and did that. And then I wanted to show you, I don't have any new yarn, but it's been a while since I've had some new shoes, right? So I got a new pair of Fluebogs. I wore them to church this morning. They arrived yesterday, and I love them so much. So these are the Rose Dunn. This is the Bellevue family, and this is the Rose Dunn. It's a little lace-up boot. It doesn't have a tongue, so if you're wearing, I have them tied pretty tightly. They go about half an inch open when I'm wearing them, so that if you're wearing like colored tights or something, you can see them. They are, and the color is not coming up quite. It's looking a little burgundy, but it's really like a really pretty kind of orchidy purple. I put a picture on Instagram yesterday. Maybe I'll like try to throw that in. So they are so pretty. So I bought that. So these were a shoe that style that they had last year, and I really liked them um, then. So they have a lot of styles this year that I really love too. But so I think I've said before that sometimes like Amazon has flu blogs, or they usually do, but like sometimes they just, I don't know, they have a weird pricing structure, but because like sometimes it one size will be like full price and the other size will be like way discounted. And that's what happened. So my size, these I got for like a third of what they originally were being sold for. And I thought, I cannot, they're practically giving them away. I need them. So I love them so much. I'm I'm really happy that I didn't give away that purple sweater. Remember the purple sweater that I knit last year? The yarn that I bought twice, and I'm still not sure about wearing the purple sweater. And I almost took it to knitting camp and gave it away for the raffle and let people raffle, um, just to get rid of it. I almost did. I'm so glad I didn't now because it's like the perfect, like, it'll go like really pretty with those. So, and my Brecken looks really good with it. So, new shoes, sheep. This was a pretty good week. So, I hope all of you have a good week and knit something really, really fun. So, until I see you next week, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.